Hello everyone. I am the Midnight Storyteller and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep. So before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? Get comfortable and relax. I work the $25 per hour night shift at a gas station. It's not what I expected. Documented account case 312, be transcribed July 2025. My name's Ryan Mercer. I'm 19. I live about 40 minutes outside of Phoenix, Arizona, small town, nothing special. 3 weeks ago, I started working the night shift at a local gas station off Route 86. Not a big chain, just a 2-pump station with an old mini-mart attached. Owner's name is Al, retired military guy. Pays me $25 an hour cash because, in his words, no one else wants to deal with the freaks after dark. Thought he was joking. He wasn't. Day 1, Friday, July 4th, 10:51 p.m. Started my shift a little before 11 p.m. Al showed me how to work the register, restock the drinks, lock the cooler doors, they jam a lot, and fill out the logbook if anything odd happens. He didn't explain what odd meant. He just said, if something feels wrong, write it down and don't leave the store. Seemed weird, but again, he's ex-military. I figured he was paranoid. By 1:30 a.m., I'd had 3 customers, a trucker, a woman buying 2 bags of ice, and a guy who looked way too sweaty to be wearing a coat in July. At around 2:12 a.m., the lights flickered for the first time. Not a full outage, just a buzz and flicker. The drink cooler lights dimmed too, but the register stayed on. A minute later, I heard breathing. Not mine. Not from outside. Inside the store. Like someone was standing behind the chips aisle just, breathing slowly. I called out. No one answered. When I stepped around the aisle, nothing. But the automatic cooler door had swung open on its own. That's when I remembered Al's rule, don't leave the store. So I stayed. And wrote it in the logbook. Day 3, Sunday, July 6, 3:42 a.m. Second full solo shift. First 2 hours were normal. One guy tried to steal scratch-offs, but I chased him off. At around 3:40, something weird happened. The security screen above the register started cycling camera feeds. Nothing unusual at first, parking lot empty, back storage room fine. But then I saw a figure inside the cooler. Not the aisle. Inside the walk-in fridge behind the beer display. It was standing in the corner, facing the wall, not moving. I went to check, thinking someone had snuck in. Opened the cooler door slowly, flashlight in hand. It was empty. Totally. But on the inside of the cooler door, written in fog, were the words, "Stay cold." Day 4, Monday, July 7th, 2:03 a.m. Didn't want to come back. But I need the money. And if I told anyone what I saw, they'd either laugh or think I was tweaking. So I convinced myself it was condensation, nothing more. Maybe I imagined the figure on the screen. Glitch, maybe. Shift was dead quiet. Until 2 a.m. sharp. That's when the microwave beeped. I hadn't used it. There was no one in the store. I walked around the counter, checked the aisle, checked the back freezer again, nothing. But the microwave was displaying midnight, blinking, and the glass was fogged up like it had just been used. And something smelled off. Like wet soil. Not gas. Not mold. Soil. Day 6, Wednesday, July 9th, 4:11 a.m. I brought a camera. Not my phone. A real one, GoPro strapped under my shirt. Al doesn't like tech, but he didn't notice. Between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., nothing happened. Then, around 4:05, the front door chimed. But no one came in. I waited behind the counter, silent, watching the camera feed. Then I saw it again. Cooler camera. Same figure. Only this time, it turned its head. Not fast. Just rotated slowly toward the glass. It had no face. Just dark, smudged skin. Like its face had been erased with sandpaper. Then the emergency exit door at the back of the storage room slammed open by itself. Alarm didn't go off. No wind. No one outside. When I checked the footage later, the GoPro battery was completely drained from 4:03 to 4:07. Nothing recorded. Day 7, Thursday, July 10th, 12 a.m. Al called before my shift. Said, "You're doing fine. Just don't let them in." I asked, "Let who in?" He hung up. Day 7, Thursday, July 10th, 12:41 a.m. Al never called back. I texted. Nothing. Didn't pick up when I tried again. I figured maybe he was messing with me, some twisted vet humor. But the way he said it. He wasn't warning me. He was reminding me. Just don't let them in. 1:16 a.m. A man came in. Mid-40s maybe. Jeans, heavy boots, torn flannel. Covered in dust like he'd been crawling through dry ground. Not dirty, dusted. He bought nothing. Just stood in front of the counter, not blinking, breathing heavily through his nose. I asked if he needed help. He said nothing. Then he tilted his head, eyes fixed on me, and asked, "Do they talk to you yet?" My throat went dry. Before I could respond, he turned around and walked straight out, without opening the door. The motion sensor never triggered. The glass didn't move. He just vanished. 2:44 a.m. The bathroom light started flickering. I ignored it. Didn't go in. Not after what happened last time. But the cooler lights began to hum again, louder than before. Buzzing like they were building to something. I walked back slowly, each aisle echoing under my steps. When I turned the corner, the cooler was open. The same cooler. The one that had written "Stay Cold." And inside, standing barefoot on the wet tiles, was a kid. Couldn't be older than 10. He was facing the back wall, arms limp at his sides, shirt soaked. I said, "Hey, are you lost?" He turned halfway, just enough for me to see one side of his face. It looked melted. Like it had been pressed against a hot glass window for too long. And in a voice that sounded like more than one person speaking at once, he said, "They always open the door. Eventually." Then he was gone. I didn't log the rest of the shift. I sat behind the counter with every light on and both hands on the bat under the register. I didn't blink for the next 2 hours. Day 8, Friday, July 11th, 9:22 p.m., before shift. I went to see Al in person. He wasn't home. His truck was in the yard, lights off, door unlocked. I knocked. Called his name. Nothing. When I peeked through the window, I saw a table full of notebooks. Old. Water damaged. Burned in places. Each one labeled with a name, a date, and always the same phrase. Night number 1, night number 2, and so on. At the bottom of every final entry. Do not let them in. Some notebooks ended on night number 3. Some on night number 21. None of them went past night number 30. I was on night number 8. I left and didn't try calling again. Day 8, shift start, 10:57 p.m. I arrived early, checked every aisle, every freezer, every lock. All was normal. Too normal. The cameras were working fine. Coolers were closed. I told myself I'd stay behind the counter all night. No more exploring. No more whispering kids. No more staring into walk-ins. 1:39 a.m. Doorbell chimed. I looked up, empty doorway. No one there. Then it chimed again. And again. 5 times in a row. But nothing on the camera. Just a blank feed. Like the video was stuck buffering. I got up, slowly, bat in hand. I took 2 steps toward the door. The glass fogged up from the outside. That shouldn't happen. It was hot out. And still. And in the fog, slowly, letters began forming. From a finger. Spelling. Open. Just that. 1 word. Then a pause. Then a second word. Please. My stomach twisted. Not from fear, from guilt. Something about that word, please, was too human. Too real. And then I heard the crying. A girl. Young. Just outside the door. I almost opened it. Hand on the latch, heart in my throat. But then. I remembered what the kid in the cooler said. They always open the door. Eventually. So I stepped back. And the crying stopped instantly. Not faded. Stopped. I watched as the fog slowly retracted, like it had been pulled away by a mouth. No sound. No trace. And then the phone rang. Line 1. The one that never rings. I picked it up. No voice. Just the static hum of cold air. Then, a whisper. Night 9 is waiting. Day 9, Saturday, July 12, 10:41 p.m. I didn't want to come back. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before walking in. Thought about quitting. Leaving town. Blocking AL's number and pretending none of this ever happened. But I didn't. I don't even know why anymore. Maybe it's the money. Maybe it's because I already opened the door halfway once. Maybe that's all it takes. 11:13 p.m. Everything felt off. The lights were too bright. The silence too heavy. Like the building was waiting for something. Or, for me. The moment I signed in on the clipboard, the cooler door in the back slammed open, hard. I jumped, rushed over. No one inside. But the security camera feed froze at that exact moment. I played it back frame by frame. And for exactly 1 frame, I saw myself, standing in the cooler, wearing different clothes, soaked in blood, staring directly into the camera. 1:02 a.m. The bathroom door opened on its own. I hadn't touched it in nights. The mirror inside was completely fogged. When I stepped closer, I saw movement in the glass, but not my own. Another version of the store. Empty shelves. Dirty walls. No windows. A darker version. In the mirror's reflection, a figure stood behind the counter. Not me. It looked like a man, but his mouth was too wide, stretched across his face like a wound, and he was smiling. Smiling at me, even though I wasn't in the room. Then he blinked. And the mirror shattered. 2:19 a.m. The girl came back. Same voice. Crying outside the door. But this time, she said something different. He's inside now. I turned. Every aisle light blinked out in sequence. Boom. 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 And then I saw him. The man with the wide mouth, standing at the end of aisle 4. Unmoving. Head tilted. I ran to the back office and locked the door. Still writing this from inside. The lights in here just flickered. Something is tapping at the wall behind the safe. I can hear breathing again. Not heavy. Not fast. Just patient. Day 10, Sunday, July 13, 4:12 a.m. I stayed in the office until sunrise. Didn't sleep. Didn't move. When the daylight pushed through the grime on the back window, the tapping finally stopped. Everything went quiet. I waited another 20 minutes before unlocking the door. The store looked untouched. No shattered glass. No fog on the coolers. No wide-mouthed man in aisle 4. Just sunlight leaking in through the front door, and a single pack of gum sitting perfectly centered on the counter. I didn't place it there. 9:33 p.m., pre-shift. I called Al. Straight to voicemail. I left a message. I don't know what's happening in this place, man. But it's not just ghosts. It's showing me things. Versions of myself. Places that don't exist. If this is some game, I'm out. If it's not, if it's real, you should have warned me. No reply. Day 10, shift start, 11:02 p.m. I brought salt. I don't know why. I read somewhere it helps. I lined the entrance and counter with it. Sprinkled some in front of the cooler. Felt stupid doing it. But at 1:12 a.m., something tried to come in anyway. I heard the door chime, but it didn't open. The glass bent inward, like something was pressing against it from the outside. Then, 5 fingers dragged through the condensation from the outside down the center of the door. And stopped exactly at the salt line. It didn't cross. Didn't break. Just vanished. 2:40 a.m. I checked the aisles again, stupidly. Needed to feel in control. Aisle 4, where I saw him. I found a note taped to the bottom shelf. Torn notebook paper. Yellowed. Smelled like mildew. It read, "He watches who stays too long." That's all. Capital letters. No signature. I took it and tucked it in the logbook. But when I turned to walk away, he was there again. Not moving. Just standing. Closer this time. Almost at the end of the aisle. His smile even wider now. He whispered, "You're almost ready." Then the lights flickered. And he was gone. Day 11, Monday, July 14, 12:06 a.m. Didn't sleep all day. Didn't eat. Didn't leave my apartment. I replayed the security footage over and over. Every appearance of the wide-mouthed man, he always shows up in the same spot, aisle 4, frame left. Always facing the same direction. Always still. But tonight's footage? He wasn't on it. Even though I saw him with my own eyes. He's not being recorded anymore. It's like the store knows I've been trying to document things. So I stopped filming. I stopped writing anything online. Only logging things in the physical notebook now. 2:12 a.m. The mirror in the employee bathroom is whole again. I know it shattered 2 nights ago. I heard it. I swept it up. But it's back. Perfect. I looked into it and didn't see myself. I saw aisle 4. Lit up like daylight. No shelves. Just a long hallway made of mirrors stretching in both directions. And in the very center. A door. Black wood. Brass handle. No sign. No writing. But it felt important. My reflection whispered. Time to open it. I turned away from the mirror. Didn't look back. 3:33 a.m. Phone rang. Not the landline. My personal cell. Blocked number. I answered. Dead air. Then. My own voice repeated the same 3 words over and over. You opened it. You opened it. You opened it. I threw the phone across the room. It cracked but didn't break. The voice kept going for another full minute before the call ended. When I checked the call log, it never registered the call. 4:04 a.m. The front door of the store was open when I returned to the counter. I didn't open it. Salt line was undisturbed. But the door was open. And just outside, lying on the concrete in a perfect square, was the same black door from the mirror. Freestanding. Waiting. Day 12, Tuesday, July 15, 4:05 a.m. It's still there. The black door. Standing in the parking lot like it belongs there, no frame, no hinges, no supports. Just a freestanding door on cracked asphalt, casting no shadow under the station lights. It doesn't move. Doesn't creak. Doesn't swing in the breeze. It waits. And behind it, I can hear something breathing. But not like the others. Not slow or heavy or human. This is deep. Wet. Mechanical. Like an engine trying to imitate lungs. 4:18 a.m. I got closer. I had to. Salt still lined the doorframe of the store. Nothing inside had moved in an hour. The store itself felt like it was recoiling. Shrinking back. Like it didn't want to be part of what came next. I stepped outside. 3 feet from the black door, the air changed. Sound dropped out. No bugs. No hum from the streetlight. Just the heartbeat in my own ears. I reached for the brass handle. And heard AL's voice, clearly, behind me. Don't. I turned fast. No one was there. But taped to the store's glass door, in sloppy marker. Night 13 is the point of no return. If you step through, you don't come back. I didn't open it. Not yet. I backed away. Stumbled inside and locked the door. Even now, the door just stands there. Waiting. Like it knows I'll eventually walk through. Like they all do. Day 12 to 5 a.m. Sunlight started breaking the horizon. And right before the black door faded. Yes, faded, like fog burning off pavement. It creaked open just 1 inch. And I swear, I saw myself standing on the other side. Smiling. Day 13, Wednesday, July 16, 12 a.m. I showed up to the station 5 minutes late. The black door was already back. Same spot. But this time, it was open all the way. And standing in the doorway, was me. Wearing the same uniform. Same shoes. Same cut on the palm I got last week opening a broken soda crate. He waved once. Then stepped backward into the dark. The door closed behind him without a sound. And vanished. 1:07 a.m. I don't remember walking to the cooler. But I was standing in front of it, staring at my own reflection in the glass. Everything behind me looked stretched. Wrong. Shelves taller than they should be. Aisles curved inward. Walls bending at impossible angles. Then I blinked. And everything was normal again. Except for the note taped to the cooler door. Inside is the only way out. 2:22 a.m. The backroom camera went black. When it returned, every single product on the shelves had been turned backward. Labels facing the wall. I checked the room. It was empty. But someone had written something on the back wall in what looked like dried oil or ink. You've seen yourself. Now let us see through you. 3:33 a.m. A man walked in. Real one this time. Real customer. Bought gas. Didn't speak much. But right before he walked out, he said, "You're lasting longer than most." I asked what he meant. He just smiled and said, "The ones who see the door usually open it by night 10. Then he turned and walked into the dark parking lot. Didn't get into a car. Just disappeared. 4:01 a.m. The black door is back again. But now, it's inside the store. Aisle 4. Right where he used to stand. It's not freestanding anymore. It's built into the shelf, like it's always been there. And the brass handle is turning. Day 14, Thursday, July 17, 4:02 a.m. The door in aisle 4 opened. I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. It opened for me. And what stood behind it wasn't a hallway, or a room, or a tunnel. It was a copy of the store. Exactly the same. Except everything inside was off. The lights were too dim, humming like they were alive. The shelves were empty, but the sounds of footsteps echoed from behind every row. And the register screen just kept flashing the same word. Replace. I stepped 1 foot inside. The smell hit first, mildew, copper, and something, burned. The floor beneath me felt sticky. I looked back over my shoulder. The real aisle 4, the one I'd known, was still there. Still lit. Still silent. But as I turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind me. 4:09 a.m. I wandered the mirrored store. A radio was playing somewhere in the ceiling, but the voice was garbled. Except for one sentence that came through clearly every loop. He stayed. He stayed. He stayed. I shouted. I ran aisle to aisle. But there was no exit. No windows. No front door. Only the cooler. And it was open. Inside, standing where the beer should be, was him again. The wide-mouthed man. Only this time, he wasn't smiling. His mouth was stretched downward, like it was pulling into his chest, like something inside him was trying to climb out. He raised one arm. Not in threat. In offering. In his hand was my name tag. Covered in blood. I didn't take it. I turned and ran. 4:16 a.m. Found a mirror near the back. It was cracked. But behind the whisper in the cabin. A steady rain tapped gently against the cabin roof, like fingertips drumming from somewhere unseen. Deep in the forest, far from any cell signal or headlights, Emily had come to spend a quiet weekend alone, just her, the trees, and the hush of falling water. She wanted silence. Rest. Escape. But something in the rain was whispering. The fire crackled softly in the hearth behind her, warm and low. Outside, the night stretched endless and black. She lay curled on a thick wool blanket, her head against the wooden floor, listening, not to music, not to her thoughts, but to the silence between the raindrops. That's when she heard it. A whisper. It came so faintly at first she thought it was part of the wind. Emily. The voice was delicate, like breath sliding across her neck. She sat up slowly, heart still calm, unsure if it had really happened. She looked around the small one-room cabin. The rain continued its rhythm on the roof. The fire popped. Nothing else moved. She lay back down. But the voice came again. Don't sleep yet. This time it was clearer. Mail. Clothes. Her eyes opened. She didn't move, didn't want to stir the air or break the fragile comfort of the firelight. Instead, she stared upward at the wooden beams, now casting long shadows that looked wrong. One of them moved. She blinked, once. Twice. Nothing. Then, a slow, dragging sound came from the far wall. Wood creaked. Not from the rain. From weight. Something was shifting, just beyond where the firelight reached. She rose to her knees, every movement slow. She didn't feel fear yet. Just unease. Like something was standing right at the edge of perception, watching her breathe. The whisper came again, but this time, from behind her. "Are you listening now?" Emily froze. She didn't turn. She couldn't. Later, when she would recount this night in a recorded statement to the authorities, her voice was steady, her words measured, almost detached. She had replayed the moment so many times in her mind that it no longer felt like a memory. It felt like surveillance footage, grainy, distant, undeniable. "I didn't move," she told the officer. "I knew something was behind me. I knew it was watching me breathe." The whisper hadn't been imagined. The acoustics of the small wooden room made it clear, it had come from less than 3 feet behind her. That's what chilled her the most. Not the words. Not even the voice. The proximity. Still kneeling, her hands trembling just slightly, Emily stared into the fire and spoke aloud, quietly, deliberately, as if narrating her own actions for the record. "If someone is in here with me, I need you to say something," she said. Her voice didn't crack. She remembers that clearly. Silence. Then, something new. Not a whisper this time. A sound. A slow, wet breath, drawn in through a narrow throat, like someone gasping after being underwater too long. It came from directly behind her ear. Emily turned. There was no one there. She stood slowly, her feet bare on the cold wood. Every instinct told her to leave, to open the front door and run barefoot into the night, into the trees, into anything that wasn't this. But she didn't. Instead, she grabbed her phone. No service. No Wi-Fi. She knew that already, but the ritual of checking made her feel human. Grounded. Real. The wind outside picked up. The rain, once soft, was now drumming hard against the windows. The fire flickered. And then she saw it. Not with her eyes at first, but with her skin. The temperature dropped so quickly that her breath came out in short, fogged bursts. And from the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Not outside. Inside. A figure. Faint. Standing just past the firelight, in the far corner of the cabin. It didn't move. It didn't speak. Emily didn't scream. "I need to document this," she whispered to herself. And she did what she'd later described to investigators as her only rational decision. She opened her phone camera, turned on the flash, and took a single photo of the corner. The screen showed nothing. But in the millisecond after the flash went off, she saw it with her own eyes, a pale face. Not angry. Not twisted. Just, watching. She didn't lower the phone right away. Her thumb hovered over the screen as the afterimage of the flash left a burnt ghost in her vision, a floating white blotch shaped like a face. She blinked rapidly. The cabin was quiet again. Too quiet. Even the rain had softened, like the storm itself was holding its breath. Emily backed toward the door, still facing the corner. Her phone trembled in her grip. She hit Photo Gallery to check the image again. Her hands were too shaky to swipe accurately. She missed. Opened a video instead, an old one, from earlier that day when she had arrived. The fire was just starting in the hearth, and she was laughing. Alone. Or so she thought. There was a shape, barely visible, in the window behind her in the frame. A tall silhouette. No details. Just form. She slammed the phone shut. Later, she would send that clip to a paranormal investigator in Virginia, anonymously. She wouldn't admit it publicly, but the image confirmed something she hadn't been ready to accept that night: she had never been alone. Back in the cabin, Emily reached the door. Her hand grasped the handle. It was ice cold. She pulled. Nothing. It didn't budge. Her eyes flicked up. The bolt wasn't locked. She hadn't locked it. In fact, the key was still hanging on the nail by the frame. But something was holding it shut from the other side. That's when the whisper came again, this time from inside her chest. "Stay. Just until it's done." She couldn't breathe. She gasped and stumbled back, clutching at her sweater like her lungs had forgotten how to expand. The air had weight. It felt thick, like smoke without fire. She fell to the floor. And then, through the haze of panic and lack of oxygen, she heard it. Clear. Rhythmic. Soft. Footsteps. Upstairs. But the cabin had no upstairs. There was no upstairs. She knew that. She had walked the entire cabin when she arrived. One room, a small bathroom, and a wood closet near the back. No stairs. No attic. Nothing. But the sound was undeniable. Slow, deliberate creaks above her head, like someone pacing on a floor that didn't exist. Emily forced herself to stand. The cold had settled into her bones, like she'd been dipped in ice. She reached for the fire poker, gripping it tightly, though it felt absurd, like bringing a butter knife to a gunfight. But the weight in her hand gave her something tangible. Something real. She turned in slow circles, trying to locate the source of the sound. The ceiling was low, covered in dark timber beams that caught the flicker of the firelight. No movement. Nothing visible. Just the persistent, steady creaking overhead, one step, then another. She whispered aloud, "There's no upstairs. There's no attic." She wasn't sure who she was trying to convince, herself, or the thing that didn't seem to care. Then, silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that invites rest. This silence was swollen, too large for the room, like it was stretching across dimensions. A pregnant pause before something horrible. And then, a knock. From inside the walls. 3 slow knocks, exactly where the back closet met the cabin's west wall. Emily stared at the door to the closet, chest heaving. She remembered setting her duffel bag in there when she first arrived. Just coats, some old boots, nothing else. Definitely no access to the outside. Definitely no room for anyone to fit. She took one step forward. And the doorknob turned. It didn't open. It just twisted left, then back to center, then left again. Slowly. Methodically. As if someone on the other side was toying with her, waiting. Emily raised the fire poker, heart pounding so hard she could hear blood in her ears. She reached out with her other hand and, with a breath she didn't know she'd taken, threw the door open. Nothing. Just her bag. And the faint smell of something wrong, wet dirt and rot. Like something had been buried in there too long. And then, the sound of a child's voice. Faint. From behind her. "Do you want to see where the others went?" Emily turned fast. Too fast. The world spun for a second as her eyes struggled to refocus. But the room hadn't changed. There was no child. No figure. Just the dull throb of fear pounding in her temples and the sound of her own breathing, now shallow and quick. But something had shifted. She didn't feel alone anymore. She didn't feel in danger either, not exactly. It felt more like being watched in a way that was clinical. Like someone was observing her reactions. Measuring them. She backed into the corner near the fireplace and crouched, her arms wrapped tight around the poker. The shadows flickered more aggressively now, as if the flames had grown nervous too. Then her phone buzzed again. Just once. A single, cold vibration. She stared down at it, still lying on the wooden floor where she had dropped it. Slowly, she inched forward and picked it up. One new photo received via airdrop. Same sender, unknown. This time, her hands didn't shake as she opened it. She almost felt numb now, like her body had decided to protect her by detaching. The photo loaded. It was another image of the room. But she wasn't in it. Same firelight. Same open closet. Same damp footprints across the wood. But she was gone. The angle was from behind the firewood stack, near the hearth. And in her place, standing exactly where she had been, was a boy. Maybe 8 or 9 years old. Pale. Barefoot. His eyes were black, not just dark, but completely black, like hollow glass marbles set into his skull. His mouth was open just slightly. And behind him, a hand. Thin. Gray. Resting gently on his shoulder. She didn't look long. She couldn't. She dropped the phone again and backed away. But as she moved, something whispered low, barely more than a vibration in her skull. "It's your turn now." Then came the scratching. Not from the door. Not from the walls. From underneath the floorboards. Emily froze in place. The sound wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. Nails. Fingernails. Dragging slowly across the underside of the floorboards directly beneath her feet. Long, deliberate strokes. As if someone, was tracing the room from below. She stepped back instinctively, pressing her spine against the log wall of the cabin. Every board beneath her seemed to hum. Not with noise, but with tension. Like the wood itself was holding something in. The fire hissed suddenly, like it had been spat on. She turned her gaze toward the flames, and that's when she noticed something terrifying in its reflection, the boy. Not in the room. In the glass pane above the fire, reflected from behind her. He was standing at the center of the room, head tilted, arms limp at his sides, eyes locked on her. But when she turned, nothing. The room was empty again. Except now, she couldn't hear the rain. She stepped toward the window. No sound. The storm, which had raged for hours, was gone. The trees stood deathly still. No wind. No rustle. Just silence. But something was very wrong. Condensation had formed on the inside of the window. The kind that forms only from intense cold. And in the fogged glass, written as if by a fingertip from the inside. "Get below." Her breath caught. She stared at the message, every muscle tense. Below? There was no basement. No trapdoor. At least, not that she had seen. But the floor. There had been a loose board by the fireplace. She remembered stepping on it when she grabbed the firewood earlier. It had shifted beneath her heel, just slightly. Emily dropped to her knees, hands scrambling across the seams in the wooden planks. And then, just as her fingers brushed the warped edge of the board, a whisper from directly beneath it. "Help me." She jolted back. Her mind screamed no, but something deeper pulled her forward. Something that didn't feel like hers. She gripped the fire poker tighter, slid the flat edge into the seam, and pried the board upward. It came free with a groan of ancient nails. And underneath, a darkness that wasn't just lack of light. It felt alive. And it was breathing. Emily stared into the opening. It wasn't a crawl space. It wasn't even a proper hole. It was a split in reality, a gash between her world and something else. The earth beneath the floor wasn't solid. It wasn't even mud. It looked like shadows had pooled into a dense, breathing mass. The air rising from the gap was wet, not from water, but from heat. And sorrow. That's the only word she could think of. Sorrow was pouring out of the ground like fog. And the breathing, it wasn't steady anymore. It was trembling. Shallow. Like someone hurt. Or waiting. She held the fire poker tight, her knuckles white. Her phone was back on the floor, still open. She didn't dare look at it again. She knew there'd be something else waiting in the gallery. Instead, she leaned forward. Slowly. Carefully. Just close enough to whisper, "Who's down there?" The answer came not as words, but as images. Flashbulb visions exploding in her mind. A boy locked in a cellar with dirt-stained walls. Scratches gouged into wood from tiny fingers. A face staring through a grate, year after year, while no one came. And then, her own face, staring back through that same grate. She fell backward, gasping. No, no, no. But it was too late. The connection had been made. Behind her, the cabin groaned, louder than ever before. The walls didn't just creak now. They shifted. Boards flexed. Nails popped loose. Like the structure itself was preparing for something to rise. Or for someone to come home. A sound echoed through the cabin now. A hollow, childlike giggle. It didn't come from below. It came from behind the closet door, the same one she had already opened. Except now. It was closed again. Emily stood frozen, her back to the breathing floor, her eyes locked on the closet door. She hadn't touched it. She knew she hadn't. She had left it wide open, her bag still inside, that thick scent of rot clinging to the air. Now it was shut. Not slammed. Not locked. Just, gently, intentionally closed. As if someone inside had reached forward and pushed it with care. The fire flickered violently. A gust of wind passed through the cabin, but the windows were sealed, and the door hadn't opened. It wasn't air. It was something else moving. Emily took a single step toward the closet. Then another. Her bare feet felt the chill of the floor like frostbite creeping upward. Her breath fogged the air. Her heartbeat was so loud now it had a rhythm. Don't open it. Don't open it. Don't. She reached for the knob. It turned without resistance. Click. She pulled the door open. Her bag was gone. In its place, a staircase. Wooden. Narrow. Descending into black. That space hadn't existed. There was no way the cabin had an underground level. It was built on concrete piers, no deeper than a foot. But the stairs were there. And at the bottom, a flicker of movement. Something pale. Something human-shaped. Sitting. A child? Emily should have run. She knew that. But the whisper that followed came not from the room, or the floor, or even her mind. It came from inside her bones. Come see what you left behind. Her hand moved before she realized it. Gripping the railing. Stepping down. 1 stair. 2. The air got colder, denser. The firelight from the cabin above barely reached her now. Behind her, the closet door creaked. And then shut itself. She turned just in time to see the sliver of light vanish as the door sealed. Then. Click. It locked. From the other side. The sound of the lock sliding into place was soft, but final. Not angry. Not rushed. Just, certain. Emily stared up at the sealed door above her, one hand still on the rail, the other clenched around the cold iron fire poker. Her skin had gone numb from the temperature, but inside, her thoughts burned. This isn't real. This can't be real. There was no door. No stairs. No basement. And yet, here she was. She turned slowly, facing the dark descent again. The stairs creaked under her bare feet as she continued downward. Each step felt longer than the last, as though the staircase was stretching, deepening, pulling her somewhere that didn't belong to the cabin. Or the earth. The darkness swallowed her. No flashlight. No signal. Only the dying warmth of the upstairs fire still faintly clinging to her clothes. Then she heard it again. Breathing. But not from below. From beside her. Too close. Emily stopped mid-step. The breathing had no body. No weight. It didn't disturb the air. It was simply there. Whispering in and out, like someone was pressed against her cheek in the dark. She didn't move. She couldn't. And then, her left foot slipped. The step was missing. She fell forward into blackness. Down. 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 She didn't land hard, but she landed. Cold stone beneath her. Damp. Old. The kind of cold that carries memory. She lay still for a moment, eyes open but blind. Then came the whisper. This time in a chorus. Children. She came back. We told her not to. Now she'll stay. A light flared suddenly. Not fire. Not electric. A lantern. Held by a child. Small frame. Pale skin. Hollow eyes. His face flickered in and out of the glow, like even the light didn't want to fully show him. He extended the lantern toward her and whispered. You forgot us. Behind him. Shadows moved. Dozens. Emily didn't stand. She couldn't. Not from fear. But from recognition. She knew that face. Not the boy himself, no, she'd never seen him before. But the look in his eyes. That hollow, endless expression of someone left behind. Of someone who waited far too long for help that never came. And something inside her cracked. The boy held the lantern higher, casting more of the chamber into view. They were everywhere. Children. Some seated. Some standing. Some pressed into the corners like they were hiding from something far worse than her. None of them spoke again. Not with words. Their presence did the speaking. They were thin. Some so thin their clothes hung from them like cobwebs. Others had no shadows. A few had no faces at all. And yet, they watched. Every one of them watched her. Emily forced herself to her knees. Her fingers grazed the cold floor, wet with something that wasn't water. She whispered, her voice raw. Why am I here? No one answered. Instead, a soft scraping echoed from the far end of the room. Stone on stone. A wall began to open. Not a door. A seam. As if the earth itself had decided to pull back. From within came a sound unlike any she'd ever heard. Not a growl. Not a scream. Something older. Worn. Like the wheeze of a forgotten wind trapped under centuries of soil. A sound that didn't come from lungs, but from memory. Then a voice, low and vast, rippled through the stone. You didn't come when we called. Emily shook her head. I didn't know. The voice interrupted, louder. You knew. And somehow, in the deepest part of her, she did. A flash of something buried long ago surged forward in her mind, a child's voice on the phone. A missed call. A cabin in this same forest, once. The dark was not empty. It pulsed. It breathed. It pressed against her skin like fog with weight, like memory given form. She could no longer see the children. No longer hear their breaths or whispers. But she felt them. All around her. Just out of reach. Waiting. Emily stood, though she didn't remember deciding to. Her legs moved like they were being guided, not by fear, but by inevitability. Like she had always been meant to reach this place. Like her entire life had been stitched around this moment. The floor felt uneven now, stone carved long ago, maybe not even by human hands. Her fingertips brushed along a damp wall as she walked, deeper into the unknown chamber. Then, without warning, light. A single bulb overhead, swaying. No fixture. No wires. Just a raw, humming bulb that flickered above a rusted metal chair bolted to the stone floor. And strapped to the chair, a notebook. Old. Warped from moisture. Her name was written across the front in faded ink. Emily June Ward. She stared. Not just because it was her name, but because the handwriting, it was hers. She stepped forward slowly, heart hammering. Every instinct begged her not to touch it. Not to open it. But her hands moved anyway. She undid the brittle leather strap and flipped to the first page. There were entries. Written in her handwriting. Dated years ago. Describing the cabin. The children. The voices. The dreams. Her dreams. She skimmed entry after entry, confusion rising like nausea. She didn't remember writing these. She didn't remember being here. But her voice was on the page. In her words. In her fear. Then she turned to the last page. Blank, except for one sentence written in deep, smeared ink. You let them die once. You don't get to forget twice. And beneath it, a Polaroid. Faded. Curled at the edges. Of Emily, no older than 12, standing outside this very cabin. Smiling. And next to her, the boy. The one with black eyes. Emily stared at the photo, her hands trembling. Her 12-year-old face beamed up at her from another lifetime, smiling, carefree, completely unaware of the horrors that would bury themselves in this place. But the boy next to her, he wasn't smiling. He wasn't even looking at the camera. He was looking at her. Even in the still image, his eyes burned with quiet accusation. His posture told a story she could no longer deny. He remembered her. And now, she was remembering him. Fragments burst through her skull like shrapnel. A summer. A group of children. An old cabin someone's uncle owned. A dare to spend the night there. And then, a scream in the woods. Someone had gone missing. A boy. They searched. They lied. They told the adults he had wandered off alone. But she had seen him. She had seen where he went. And she had done nothing. Emily dropped the notebook, the memory crashing into her like a wave of ice water. The truth roared through her chest now, undeniable. This wasn't a haunting. This was a reckoning. The children weren't ghosts in the traditional sense. They were remnants, pieces of innocence shattered by betrayal. Forgotten souls sealed beneath rotting wood and silence. And she was the last one who hadn't paid. Behind her, the stone wall groaned open again. The chamber expanded, revealing an archway carved in bone-white roots, tangled like ribs. Beyond it, something waited. The air bent in strange ways. The shadows inside that arch didn't match the flicker of the light behind her. Then came the sound, wet, crawling limbs dragging across stone. It was coming. Not angry. Not violent. Just, hungry. And Emily knew. She could run, like she did back then. Or she could walk into the arch. And finally face what she left behind. Emily stood at the threshold. The root-covered arch pulsed faintly, as if it were alive, like it was breathing with the thing beyond it. The light behind her, the single swaying bulb, flickered again, weaker this time. As if it too didn't want to witness what came next. The air inside the arch was wrong. The pressure shifted the moment she stepped closer, like walking through water, thick and slow. A whisper echoed again, not from the children, not from her memory. This time it came from whatever waited on the other side. Step in, or they'll stay. Her chest tightened. Not with fear, but with guilt. These weren't just shadows of the past. They were held here, bound by a moment she had buried, rewritten, or simply refused to accept. A choice that fractured more than her memory. She stepped forward. The roots didn't resist. They opened. The moment she passed through the arch, the cold became unbearable. Her vision blurred. Her ears rang. And then, it all stopped. Sudden silence. She stood in a room of mirrors. But not clean, polished ones. These were warped, like the old ones in traveling carnivals, bent and rippled glass reflecting pieces of herself back at odd angles. And within each reflection, she wasn't alone. In one mirror, she saw her 12-year-old self staring out in panic. In another, she saw herself hiding behind a tree, covering her ears while a boy screamed for help in the distance. In another, she stood smiling, lying to adults. Each version of her held the eyes of someone who chose silence over truth. Emily spun in place, surrounded now by dozens of herself. And then, one reflection stepped forward. It didn't mimic her. It smiled, wrong, slow, and whispered. "We remember what you did." And behind that reflection, rising like a shadow at its back, was the boy. Older now. No longer a child. Changed. The boy was no longer small. The figure behind the reflection towered over Emily's mirrored twin. He was gaunt but impossibly tall, with elongated limbs that moved like smoke through water. His face was pale, stretched, and blurred around the edges, like a memory that had decayed over time. Only one thing remained crystal clear. His eyes. Still black. Still bottomless. Still fixed on her. Emily backed away from the mirror, but her reflection didn't follow. It remained still, smiling. Behind the glass, the boy, no, the thing, placed one hand on the reflection's shoulder. Its fingers were long, jointed wrong, wrapped in something that looked like old roots and torn cloth. The mirror cracked. Just slightly. A hairline fracture ran from top to bottom across the image. And then the creature spoke. Not with sound, but directly into her head. "I never left the woods." Another mirror cracked. "You left me in them." Crack. "Now you live here too." The chamber quaked. Dust fell from the ceiling. The mirrors rattled like teeth in an old skull. Emily screamed, not in fear, but in raw regret. "I didn't know," she shouted. "I was a child. I didn't understand." "You understood enough to lie." All the mirrors shattered at once. The sound wasn't glass, it was like memories breaking. The space went black. And then she was falling again. Downward. Deeper. Through layers of memory, guilt, shadow. Until she landed. Soft. Wet. Mud clung to her hands. Around her, trees. Rain falling. Wind rustling leaves. She was outside. In the woods. Exactly where the boy had gone missing. And just a few meters away. A small body. Lying still, curled against a rotted tree trunk. Emily didn't move at first. The forest around her was quiet in a way she had never known. Not peaceful, held breath quiet. Like the trees themselves were watching. Like the entire forest had turned its eyes to this moment. The rain was falling gently again. Just like that night. The body lay maybe 10, 15 feet away. Small. Barefoot. A thin white shirt clinging to its back, soaked and clinging to skin that was too pale. Time had bleached it. The soil had cradled it. She stepped forward. One step. Another. Mud sucked at her feet like it wanted to keep her in place. But she kept moving. The closer she got, the more the memory returned, not just emotionally, but fully. With sound, scent, color. She remembered the laughter earlier that day. The dares. The way he had wandered off into the woods and never returned. How they chose not to follow him. Because it was dark. Because it was scary. Because they were kids and fear made selfish choices easy. Emily dropped to her knees beside the body. The face was turned just slightly toward her. Mouth parted. Eyes still open. Still black. Not from rot. Not from death. From whatever had taken hold down here. And yet, even now, the expression wasn't angry. It was waiting. She reached out slowly and touched the child's hand. It was cold. Too cold. But as her fingers touched his eyes blinked. She gasped and pulled back. He sat up. Effortlessly. Unnaturally. Rain poured over his head as he turned to face her. No words. Just recognition. Emily didn't scream. She didn't run. She whispered, "I remember now." The boy tilted his head. And then said, quietly, "Then you know what comes next." Emily didn't ask what he meant. She already knew. The rain intensified, soaking through her clothes, matting her hair to her face. But she didn't move. The boy sat across from her, his small frame eerily still, black eyes reflecting no light, only her. Her face. Her guilt. Her memory. He raised one hand slowly and pointed toward the woods behind her. She turned. The trees had parted. There, lined along a narrow path of mud and roots, stood the others. The forgotten children. Some she recognized from the basement, their faces dimly burned into her memory from the flickering lantern light. Others were new. Older. Adults now. Faces warped by time, decay, or worse, by remembrance. All of them had died here, one way or another. Drawn back. Trapped. Bound to a moment someone refused to acknowledge. And Emily, standing in the center of it all, realized. They weren't haunting her. They were waiting for her to make the final choice. The boy stood. Rainwater ran down his face like tears. He stepped forward and held out his hand. "Come," he said. "You know where it ends." Behind her, the ground trembled softly. The cabin was no longer there. Only a pit. A dark, gaping hollow in the forest floor. A place beneath everything. Beneath memory. Beneath denial. She took a breath. And stepped toward the edge. Mud sucked at her heels. The rain poured harder. The world tilted. She turned once more to face the boy. "Will it fix anything?" she asked, barely audible. He didn't answer. But his hand reached for hers again. And this time, she took it. Then he whispered, as the forest groaned open. "It won't fix it. But it'll end it." And together, they stepped into the dark. The drop wasn't physical. Not entirely. Emily expected to fall, into dirt, into water, into stone. But instead, the world peeled away. Like stepping through the surface of a dream that had waited too long to be remembered. There was no sound. No rain. No wind. Only shifting dark, and the sensation of being watched by thousands of unseen eyes. The boy's hand stayed locked in hers, small, dry, impossibly strong. He walked calmly beside her through the void, barefoot and silent. Beneath their steps, memories surfaced. Each one played out around them, like echoes stuck in fog. A girl laughing at the edge of the woods before disappearing forever. A group of teenagers lying to parents while one child was never found. A younger Emily, sitting alone, staring at a silent phone, not calling. The boy finally spoke. His voice was flat. Not angry. Not sad. Just truth. We called you, over and over. More memories rose. This time, her adult life, moments of unease, dreams of the woods, shadows in photographs, whispers through walls. Signs she had ignored. Warnings. The boy turned to her. We were never haunting you. You were haunting us. Her breath caught. They weren't here to punish her. They were here to release themselves from her memory. To be unburdened. Because holding on to the forgotten hurts just as much as being the one who forgets. Suddenly, the dark gave way to light. But not warm, golden light. Cold. Fluorescent. Artificial. She looked around. Concrete walls. Metal door. A table. A file with her name on it. She was in an interview room. And on the other side of the table, a man in a gray suit, clipboard in hand, voice low. Miss Ward, he said calmly. You've been found. Emily opened her mouth, but no words came out. Behind her, the boy stood one last time. Only now, his face was at peace. He was fading. And as he disappeared, he whispered. Now we can sleep. Emily sat motionless in the cold metal chair. The light above her buzzed, sharp, white, surgical. The kind that exposes every crack, every flaw, every truth. Her fingers twitched on the tabletop. Her reflection in the polished steel looked like someone else. The man in the gray suit flipped open the file. You've been missing for 3 days, he said softly. Found walking barefoot along Route 12. No ID. No phone. You were talking to someone who wasn't there. Emily didn't respond. How could she explain what had happened? Where she had been? She glanced to the far corner of the room, almost instinctively. Nothing. No boy. No shadows. Just the hum of lights and the faint scratch of pen on paper. You kept repeating a name, the man added, tapping the file. Jacob Rains. That mean anything to you? Emily blinked. The name fell like a stone into the still water of her mind. Jacob. That was his name. The boy she had left behind. She nodded slowly, the motion feeling ancient in her neck. He was real, she said quietly. He didn't get lost. We let him vanish. The man scribbled something. This was in your jacket pocket, he added, and slid a photograph across the table. Emily's breath stopped. It was the photo, the Polaroid from the notebook. Her 12-year-old self. Jacob beside her. The woods behind them. But this time, it looked different. Jacob was smiling. Not the cold, haunting expression from before. This was genuine. Like the photo had been rewritten. The man stood and left the room, the door shutting softly behind him. Emily sat there, alone, holding the image in both hands. The silence was thick. But this time, it was peaceful. Not heavy. Not watching. No breathing from the walls. No whispers from the floorboards. Just stillness. True silence. And for the first time since she stepped into that cabin, Emily closed her eyes. And slept.